Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. The new official firmware release of Betaflight 2025.12 has come, and the purpose of today's video is to get its position and altitude hold working in combination with the GPS module plus compass. All the necessary steps will be covered to get those new features running, starting by flashing the new Betaflight 2025.12 firmware, compass alignment and calibration, set up switches in the modes tab, trimming accelerometer and testing the new features on the field. So, let's get started. Just connected the drone to the new Betaflight configurator, and we are about to flash the new firmware, but first we go into the CLI tab and save the current configuration just by typing dump. And so here it's going to show all our configuration in the drone, every single thing. So what we can do, click it down here on save to file, save the text file wherever it's easier for you to find it. I've already done this step, so just skip it. And also it's a good idea to take screenshots of the PID tuning. So take screenshots of the PID tuning tab, rate profile filter setting, as well as your failsafe tab, maybe also the configuration one. Because once we flash the new firmware and we are ready to upload the dump file, we are gonna surely get some errors, mainly regarding the PID tuning section. So if we have a visual reference, we can adjust this error easily. Okay, so let's go to setup and click on activate bootloader DFU. And now we can click on firmware flasher. And we can go to choose the board. Mine is PDB F405V4. Okay. And we're going to load the 2025.12.1 firmware. And just leave the full chip erase on. On the right side, I got the TBS Crossfire on as a receiver. So radio protocol is going to be Crossfire. If you got the ELRS receiver, you should also have the Crossfire protocol here. If you use the DJI remote control 2, 3, you should go with S-Bus or I-Bus. But usually it's S-Bus for that one. So anyway, for me, it's Crossfire, so I'll go with Crossfire. OSD protocol, mine is digital, since this drone runs with the DJI O3 unit. Telemetry protocol will leave automatically included, and motor protocol this shot. Down here, I get rid of a acro trainer and leave the other stuff, and now we need to include altitude hold. And then I got compass included with my GPS module, so include the magnetometers and position hold, of course. That's all. We don't need to add any custom define. So let's scroll down and click on load firmware online. Okay. Once it's downloaded, we can flash. Okay, flash firmware. Okay, the firmware has been flashed. We can now connect the drone to Betaflight. Okay, you can usually get this warning. The following problems with your configuration were detected. Accelerometer is unable but is not calibrated, so we just need to calibrate the accelerometer. Okay, this one. Alright, that's done. The icon of the compass is on, accelerometer is on, barometer is on. Okay. Okay, now we go into the CLI tab and we reload the dump file. So click on load from file and get the text file. Okay, click on execute. And we got some down there. Okay. Okay. Type save, enter. So I saved my photos on my phone. So I'm gonna go through and check about the changes we just seen. Starting the post tab, UART1 is configuration MSP. Okay, and we go on to the failsafe. Then we go to the PID tuning tab. Choose this one. Okay, now damping 0.8, that's correct. P&I gains to 1. Stick response 0.6. Dynamic damping 0. Drift wobble 0.85, correct. Pitch damping 1.1. Pitch tracking 1. Massa multiply 1.2, yep, correct. And then we go to rate profile 70, 70, 70, and delta setting. Okay, now we started with calibrating and aligning the compass. So let's do that now. So it's time to align the compass. This is my GPS module plus compass, the Worksnail M181. So if we look underneath, that's the socket wires, of course. This is the chip of the compass, this one here. And if I can focus properly, yeah, we can see on the top left corner there is a small dot. That dot indicates us which direction the X, Y, and Z axis are facing to. Okay, so here is the representation of my GPS module from the bottom, the socket wires at the compass, and that's the compass here. So with the dot on the top left corner, the X axis is pointing backwards, the Y axis is pointing to the right, and the Z axis is pointing upwards. Also, you usually GPS module with an integrated compass has an arrow which indicates which direction the compass needs to face to compared to the flight controller. I know for sure that this particular GPS module faces wherever the socket wires is. So socket wire is at the bottom left corner, so it means it's facing this way. So usually this type of GPS module needs to be connected this way with the socket pointing forward towards the nose of the drone. But I'm gonna mount this way with the socket pointing to the back of the drone. So this direction needs to be taken in consideration when we go to align it on the iNav configurator. So we're going to use iNav configurator in demo mode, and we are going to align the compass compared to the flight controller. Okay, here we are on iNav configurator. First thing, we select demo mode, so we can connect to the configurator without plugging any flight controller with iNav firmware. We go down here on alignment tool, scroll down to the second graph, and what we need to do here, first select X, Y, and Z up here, and what we are gonna do is to align the X, Y, and Z here on the simulator, as same as the one we checked before. So basically how the axis on your compass looks like when looked from the back. If your compass chip is mounted on a different angle, so the dot is either on the top right corner or bottom left or right corner, this graph here will help you out to recognize to what directions the X, Y, and Z axis are facing to, so that you can easily recreate the same position here in the alignment tool. And I'll leave the same picture from my sketch. So here my X-axis is pointing backwards, which is somewhere around here, so this one on 0. And the Y-axis is pointing right and the Z upwards. So it's pretty much like this. 180. Okay. So once we have set this one up, then we go back on magnetometer here. And now we're gonna readjust these sliders and basically position the GPS module here on the simulator as it's gonna be mounted on the actual drone. Now the next thing to do is to click here, go on the magnetometer, and now we're gonna recreate the position of the GPS module as it's gonna be mounted on the drone. So in my case, it's gonna be 0 here on the roll axis, and I believe it's gonna be the same for you since the GPS antenna must face to the sky. The pitch axis I'm gonna leave out 180, and the yaw axis gonna be at 90 degrees, because remember the arrow on the GPS module is pointing backwards when I mount on my drone. So after we have gathered this useful information from iNav alignment tool, we take note of them and we jump onto Betaflight, and we're gonna type these values in the configuration tab on Betaflight here. So we jump over here, magnetometer alignment, click on custom. Now we say in pitch, in roll axis is gonna be 0. Pitch axis is 180. And your axis is 90. Okay, and just now click on save and reboot, and then we jump to calibrate the compass. Okay, to initiate the compass calibration, we can use our stick command, which is pitch down and yaw top right. So this way the calibration begins. Also, if your flight controller can connect to the SpeedyB app, You can use that one to start the calibration simply by connecting the flight controller to the speed app via the Bluetooth, and go into Betaflight and setup page, click on start calibration. Just make sure to do the calibration outside, away from any type of interference, and the calibration is to be done on all 6 axes, performing a 360-degree turn spin. In this other graph, you can see how the drone needs to be positioned during the calibration. Remember that within 30 seconds, you need to perform a 360-degree rotation on each 6 axes shown on this graph. I also show you how I actually do it. This is the result here. In the USD tab, enable the compass bar so that you can see if the compass is actually pointing pretty much to the right cardinal directions compared to the compass on your phone. Okay, let's now assign the switches in the modes tab. So the switches I'm going to assign are the classic ones, R, angle, and then we get here the new features of Betaflight, altitude hold and position hold, then GPS rescue, the beeper, and the flip off after crash, aka the turtle mode. Okay, click on range, we assign the arm switch first. Okay, and then we go with angle mode. It's already in the middle position, and I'm going to extend this one. Then we go with the altitude hold, add range. Alright, and I'm going to extend this one as well. And then position hold, add range. Okay, so when the altitude hold is also in together with the position hold, apparently this feature works better. And then GPS rescue. Okay, so angle mode is also on when the GPS rescue is called on. And then we add the beeper. So I assign the beeper on a temporary switch, and then last one, flip over after crash. Okay, so double check everything is working. Throttle is on, angle mode is on, altitude hold is on. Yep. Yep. Okay. Everything is set. Click on save. Now, another important step is to tune the value of throttle hover, which will allow the drone to hover mid-air when altitude hold and position hold are engaged. First thing, make sure that in the USD tab, the throttle value element is enabled. Then go on the field, fly in angle mode and throttle up until the drone stays still, so it doesn't ascend or descend. And take note of the throttle value. In my case, is 24%. Then back on the bench, power up the drone without arming it. Connect it also to Betaflight and go on the receiver tab. Power up your transmitter and goggles, and while looking in the goggles, throttle up until you reach the throttle value you took note of on the field. In my case is 24%. Now in the receiver tab you see that the throttle value has increased, giving us the real value, and in my case is 1297. Therefore we need to type this value in the throttle over field in the GPS rescue on the failsafe tab. Since altitude hold relies on angle mode, we need to make sure that angle mode itself works properly, which means that when angle mode is engaged, the drone must not drift to any direction by itself. If it does so, then trimming the accelerometer is necessary. First step is to place the drone on a flat surface, and in the setup page on Betaflight, we need to click on Calibrate Accelerometer. Then on the field, arm the drone in angle mode and just throttle up, without touching pitch and roll sticks, to see how the drone moves. In my case, it drifts forward and to the right. So, to counterbalance this behavior, we need to trim the accelerometer. So disarm the drone but keep it powered up and put the throttle stick all the way up, and in my case, since the drone was going forward and to the right, I'm gonna move the pitch stick backwards a couple of times and the roll stick to the left a couple of times too, to counterbalance the movement. Once done, move the throttle stick back to 0 to save the adjustment. Now fly test again in angle mode and make the proper adjustment until the drone flies upward without drifting that much on any direction, like so. Here is when the real headache has begun. As you can see, the drone would be able to keep its altitude, but it also spins around constantly, which means the positional hold is not working as it's supposed to be. I thought that I didn't calibrate the compass very well, so I did it again and again. I also tried to trim the accelerometer more in details, but no matter the efforts, every time I tested the positional hold, the drone would always spin around. So clearly the issue lied elsewhere, and I was determined to find and fix it. First thing I did was to pay more attention to the home point arrow on the goggles, and I noticed that the arrow was not pointing to the location where the drone lifted off. Then I connected the drone to Betaflight on the setup page, and there I also noticed that the yaw degree was off compared to the one showed on the compass on my phone, as you can see here. Only at this stage I realized that most probably I was wrong about the arrow direction on the GPS module. As I said, since there is no arrow label on this GPS module, I believe that it pointed where the wire socket was. So then I changed the compass alignment as shown here and calibrated the compass once again. After this adjustment, when I go on the setup page, the yaw degree is pretty much in accordance to the compass orientation on my phone, so it looks like that at least on the bench things have gone to the right direction. Now the only thing left to do is to test the positional hold on the field once again. As you can see now, the arrow is pointing to the home point where the drone lifts off, so things are looking pretty good at the moment. So switch to position hold soon.
Finally it's working after so much headache.